This is U.S. Army Closer Look.
I think the job is pretty awesome.
Innovating.
Insight.
Soldiers.
Mission.
Closer Look.
Closer look.
Those who were there.
And what we need to make sure is we have the most capable Army to deliver specific effects on a battlefield relative to U.S. national security interests.
Those experiences, those strategies.
Closer look.
Closer look.
Army Media. Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Elio Valdez. One of our guests today is...
My name is Colonel Brett G. Sylvia. I am the commander for 2nd Brigade Combat Team, 101st Airborne Division, Air Assault.
Our own Jock Bannerman had a chance to speak with Colonel Sylvia and other senior leaders from the brigade about their recent deployment to Iraq in support of OIR.
That's correct, Operation Inherent Resolve. As you know, there are 2 brigade combat teams that deploy in Afghanistan. There's 1 brigade combat team that deploys to Iraq under Inherent Resolve, and we were that brigade combat team.
What drives you? If you had to list one thing that would have been the most inspirational, personally satisfying, what would you say it was during your time in the region?
I was very fortunate on this deployment to be able to spend Christmas Day in a church that had been recently refurbished by the commander of the federal police, so that the civilians of the town of Karakush and a neighboring town of Bartella, they were able to attend Christmas Mass in a Christian church, something they had not done in over 2 years. And not only did they refurbish it so that the local people could go and attend the service, but they attended it themselves. And these are, devout Muslim men who came and celebrated Christmas Mass, stood alongside me, stood alongside some of my soldiers, stood alongside the people of that village. And in terms of things that are inspirational, that to me was such a powerful symbol of what could be in this region. How you have the Iraqi security forces that sometimes are competitive with one another, standing side by side, attending this service. Having people of different backgrounds, of different ethnicities, different religions, who were worshiping right next to one another. And then our partnership with them, right there, all visible that one day on Christmas Day. And if I were to say what was my best day ever in Iraq, I'd have to say that was it.
Can you describe for me what that timeline has been like getting to the 2016 deployment?
So my own experiences in Iraq started in 2003 after the initial invasion. So there in 2003, 2004 to see really the beginning. I went again during the surge in 2006, 2007, and then spent some time in Afghanistan in the interim, and then came back here for this with Operation Inherent Resolve in 2016 to 2017.
And Operation Inherent Resolve carried with it a very real mandate. Can you kind of tell us what that was about? What was the rationale for the one and only maneuver brigade to be deployed?
So we were there in an advise and assist role. The mission for Operation Inherent Resolve was the military defeat of ISIS. And our portion of it was the military defeat of ISIS in Iraq. And as an advise and assist brigade, we were there to assist the Iraqis. We were there to compel them to successfully expel ISIS from their country.
And what kinds of training and what kinds of processes did you and your unit put in place to facilitate that?
We characterized our mission by 3 primary lines of effort. We advised, we assisted, and we protected. Advising was about what it sounds like, us standing next to an Iraqi counterpart, a military commander. My counterpart was a 3-star general. Others, battalion commanders, company commanders, their counterparts were 2- and 1-star generals. And they had their counterparts in order to be able to advise them on the construct of operations and the execution of operations. And we had an advisory structure that facilitated that. The second mission was to assist. Assisting were those things that we did with our own hands. So flying UAVs in support for information collection. We had precision munitions that we would fire in support of their maneuver, and some other enablers that are uniquely U.S. And so that was how we assisted them in the military defeat. And then the third mission was protect. And in order to be able to put advisors or those who were assisting on the battlefield at the right time and place of our choosing to facilitate their success, required a whole superstructure of soldiers that were reaction forces, security forces, logisticians, communicators, things that helped to put those other personnel in the right place at the right time.
Big challenges.
Certainly. And what we witnessed during our time there in 2016, 2017, we believe was a true transformation of what occurred on the battlefield, a transformation of our authorities, a transformation of our capabilities during that time. When we showed up, it was a very static environment where there was just advising from some established FOBs, doing some limited training, and that changed, pretty radically over the course of our 9 months there.
What would you say was the biggest challenge prior to deploying the unit in your train up, and what were the things that you had to take into account in order to prepare to even make the deployment?
Going over there on an advise and assist mission, or what some people would characterize as a security force assistance mission, meant that we couldn't take everyone. I'm a brigade commander. I'm responsible for a 4,200 soldier infantry brigade combat team. But I was only taking over with me right around 1,300 of those soldiers. And over the course of that deployment, we did end up bringing more, and the total task force strength, once we were deployed, was right around 2,500. But still, even if all of those had come from our brigade, it still would not have represented a majority. And so the biggest challenge that we had leading into the deployment was really figuring out how are we going to execute the mission that we needed to execute in Iraq while still having a formation at Fort Campbell, Kentucky that we needed to build and sustain readiness.
How would you rate the success of the deployment?
I believe that we were extremely successful. And really, you can look no further than just how much terrain was seized by the Iraqi security forces over the time that we were there. They were in somewhat of a static operation with ISIS when we arrived, making some limited gains in some areas. But over the course of the time that we were there, they not only took back an area about the size of West Virginia, liberating the majority of the Euphrates River Valley, the majority of the Tigris River Valley, and all of eastern Mosul. And in doing so, they liberated over 2 million Iraqis who had been subjugated under the rule of ISIS during that time.
Of all the con ops that I think that we have seen develop over the last 4 to 5 years in that particular region, multi-domain battle has sort of risen to the top. Do you think this is perhaps a standard setter for that particular con op and how to address it in future?
I would say that it is certainly a good test case of how that is shaping up. Some of the challenges that we saw out there on the battlefield was we used to have air supremacy. We no longer have that, dealing with enemy UASs as we were approaching Mosul. And as we look at the internet, that cyberspace domain, we don't have supremacy clearly in that realm. And even ISIS was able to be very aggressive on social media and to do things to either recruit or to persuade populations in one direction or another. So understanding those things, we then brought to bear our own capabilities and truly met them in these domains in order to be able to counter their offensive operations.
Sir, you have anything you want to add?
The only other thing that I do want to add was the other aspect of something that was very inspirational for me was the commitment of our soldiers. And our soldiers during this deployment lived in conditions of austerity that were not seen since the initial invasion in 2003. And we asked that of them, to be able to do that, to advise their partners, not even to fight for themselves, just to be able to be there to advise their Iraqi counterparts so that they can be successful. And the level of commitment that I saw from our soldiers to be willing to endure those hardships, to make their counterparts successful, was something over the course of the entire deployment that was also very similarly inspirational to me.
Closer look.
Closer look.
All right, my name is Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Wiley, and I'm the commander of the 1st Battalion, 26th Infantry Regiment, 2nd Brigade Combat Team, 101st Airborne Division, Air Assault.
Ooh, wow. What were your previous adventures in Iraq like?
Throughout my career, I've deployed to Iraq, and that's almost been something that's characterized my time in my 19 years in the Army. And my first deployment was in 2003 with the 3rd Infantry Division, and we were in Baghdad. And I deployed again in 2005 to Samarra with the 3rd Infantry Division, and then deployed again with the 82nd, 2nd Brigade of the 82nd to Anbar as a part of Operation New Dawn. And so this was my 4th deployment to Iraq, and it has been really amazing to see the transformation of the country over the last decade.
What did you think was going to happen with this particular type of deployment?
Well, I would say that, none of our forces, none of the U.S. forces, the coalition is on the front line. We are supporting and enabling our Iraqi counterparts to take the fight to ISIS. And I would say that the thing that I have seen change the most through each of these deployments was the extent to which our Iraqi partners are carrying the load now in Iraq, and this is their fight. They are committed to winning, committed to defeating ISIS. They show that commitment every day through their efforts on the battlefield. And I saw that commitment firsthand through my partner. His personal sense of ownership in taking his country back from ISIS was palpable every day as he planned, executed operations. He was on the front lines, and I would routinely get reports of his personal efforts to compel his forces forward, and this was in the fight in Fallujah. But I think he demonstrated the level of commitment, really, of the entire Iraqi security forces.
If you were asked to prepare for this mission prior to, advise, assist, protect, before you got there, what did you think that meant?
Sir, that's a good question. And we had conducted what I thought, very thorough train-up prior to getting into theater. In fact, I would describe it in retrospect as almost as good of a train-up as the Army can give you based off the time that any unit has to prepare for a deployment. And the Blue Spaders, 1st Battalion, 26th Infantry Regiment, we activated 1 year prior to the deployment. And then we had 1 year to prepare ourselves to deploy in support of Operation Inherent Resolve as a part of the 2nd Brigade Combat Team. As a part of that train-up, we got to go to 2 different JRTC rotations, Joint Readiness Training Center rotations, where we got to practice the skills we would use in Iraq. Important to that, I think, is one of those rotations was focused on what we call decisive action in unified land operations. And that really prepared us for the type of fight that our Iraqi partners would be in. And so we became, what I would say, experts at helping our Iraqi partners understand how to conduct combined arms maneuver in their country. We then were able to transition to a Security Force Assistance Academy and put to use some of our skills as the skills we would need to be advisors in practice and training. And so it gave us the full breadth of, I think, tools that we needed to be successful advisors once we got into Iraq.
After you get through advising and you find yourself there, face to face, where does the assist part come in? hands-on?
Very hands-on, and the Advise and Assist mission across the BCT was a very up-close and personal mission with our Iraqi partners. We personally, and our battalion's Advise and Assist team, I was the lead advisor for the Baghdad Operations Command. We were embedded with our partners, and so every day we would go to work at their headquarters, and we maintained a joint operations cell with our partners, and I was meeting every day with my Iraqi partner in his headquarters. We maintained a 24-hour presence in the headquarters so that we could help track operations with them, and I think that gave that kind of persistent presence was what was absolutely required in order to help enable our partners to be successful against ISIS.
Does that lead you right into the third part of that mission, protect?
It absolutely does, sir, because you can't conduct the Advise and Assist mission without the ability to protect our force. And there's absolutely some risk that we have to incur in order to be with our partners, to have that persistent presence, and so that we mitigate that through that protection aspect. And the Blue Spaders had soldiers really throughout the country conducting security force missions in order to protect our advising teams and our other coalition partners. We had security force teams up at Giara West, the base there, at Taji, at Union 3, and so we were really throughout the country providing that security force mission. My final thought is that I was so proud to get to be a part of this mission and be a part of this team that had what I think was a really important impact on the future of Iraq and the defeat of ISIS. Having been to Iraq 3 previous times and having seen that country go back and forth and have sometimes success, and of course having some failures as ISIS was able to retake large parts of the country after I left in 2010 and 11. To come back and get to see the commitment of my Iraqi partners in the fight to not only defeat ISIS, but then to really retake their country was something that I am just was really proud to get to be a part of, and it gives me hope for the future of Iraq.
This is U.S. Army. Closer Look.
I think the job is pretty awesome.
Innovating. Insight.
Soldiers.
Mission.
Closer Look.
Those who were there.
And what we need to make sure is we have the most capable Army to deliver specific effects on a battlefield relative to U.S. national security interests.
Those experiences, those strategies.
Closer Look.
Army Media.